So, today is February 15th, 2012, and we are interviewing Josh, what is your last name, please? Sanders, at the Illinois State Library. Josh, can you give us a little bit of information about yourself, where you were born, how old you are?
I'm 32 years old. I was born at St. Mary's Hospital in Decatur, Illinois.
Great. And my name is Cheryl Walker, and I'll be interviewing you, Josh. Okay, Josh, could you state for the record what war and branch of service you served in?
I was in the Army, the active element. I was an infantryman, and I went and served during the Iraq conflict and was stationed in Baghdad for the duration.
What was your rank?
E4, which was a specialist.
Okay. What was your job assignment?
Anything from TCPs, which are traffic control points, and local international house searches, making sure people were doing the right thing. We were stationed at the firehouse in Solder City, which is like this maze of clay buildings, and the firehouse was positioned caddy from the Ministry of Finance, and we had hold up there as well. We had replaced National Guardsmen that had came in and established those strongholds before we came in, and they turned the power over to us when we were leaving them with their duty.
So you saw combat?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there many casualties in your unit?
There were some.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
One that was really one that I'll never forget, and it's because I actually have a piece of it here with me in the States. One of our duties was to patrol the college, the university there in Baghdad, and I had 3 pictures with me, and there was one of my wife, Mindy, my son, Dylan, and my dad, who had served before me. We were patrolling through the university, and at this point in time, it was a mess. They were trying to get everything rounded up, books, pencils, things like that, supplies, and Alibaba, that's what the locals called the bad guys, would thieve things from them, and they were getting in through this fence line. And there was this big hole in the perimeter. Well, it was like chain link and spread open. And these art kids and this professor were like running out, and we're all like chasing them, trying to catch them. And they get away, and the professor's like, this is what's wrong, this is where they're getting in from and everything. So we didn't have any engineers with us or anything like that. It was just a bunch of infantry guys. But we could call that in and have people come in and fix that up for them. What had happened, I had my squad come up and they pulled guard. So I laid my weapon with them, and they set up this little perimeter so I wouldn't be in danger. And I picked up rebar that was on the side of the fence area and wove it in with a big piece of corrugated steel, and I crimped it in and bent it around and kind of knotted it up. Well, the college kids there thought it was crazy that I did that. They were one in particular. He was an art major, and he was flipping out. He just thought it was amazing. He's like, "You're strong, the strongest man in Baghdad," or whatever. And I thought it was funny because it was just silly to me. It's just like little rebar. Anyway, he was like, "You have family and everything," and I show him pictures of my family, and he's like, "Oh, Allah's blessed you and everything." I'm like, thank you, And he goes, "I take." I take, and it was a picture of my son, and I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Well, the professor spoke really good English, and he was like, he's an art major, he wants to take this picture and do a portrait for you. Now, we were not going, it was, at one point in time, we would be doing college, we would be patrolling the college area, Ministry of Finance downtown around the Lions Den area. So we never knew when we would be back. And I kind of flipped out a little bit. I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but all right. So I hand over the only picture of my son that I have in Iraq, and and it was crazy because you don't know if you're gonna come back. You don't know if you're gonna come back home. And I handed him the picture, and I didn't see him for like a month. So we had moved from the Ministry of Finance. My squad did. Our platoon was kind of in halves. We took security at the firehouse and the Ministry of Finance. Well, we had alternated out, and I was with my people over at the firehouse. And this guy had no idea of anything. So he's looking all over Baghdad for me, I later find out. And I don't believe I'm ever getting this picture back. I'm feeling down in the dumps. It's like my birthday, which is the exact date that the Fedayeen was installed, July 14th, 1979. So it was a very interesting birthday that year. So I'm out on guard, or not on guard, I'm out on patrol doing local international house searches, grabbing up weapons and things like that. And we are coming in off of our patrol, and you get maybe an hour down, and that's to like open up your boots and kind of let air get in, and then it's on for guard duty for about anywhere from 2 or 4 hour shift depending on what's going on, and then you'll get a rack out for about 3 unless you have mission, and then it's it's kind of a crazy schedule, but understand why. Excuse me. This guy, he's looking for me, and he comes up, and my buddies that are at the gate, they go, "You're not going to believe this." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Johnson thought this guy was like running into the gate, so their weapons poised," and he's like, "No, and he holds up this picture as he's being tackled, to the ground. They're saying "Shufa Dayak," which means "get down on your knees" in Arabic, and he's holding this picture. And Johnson, a friend of mine, he's like, "Hey, that's Sanders' kid," and he like picks it up and he dusts him off. He's like, "Where'd you get this?" And he's like, Mr. Sanders," and he pulls out this tube. And it's an exact copy done in number 2 pencil of my son's portrait. And it's the best art I've ever seen in my life. And I never got to thank the guy. It was laying on my rack when I come back in from patrol. And I really wish I could say thank you, because my wife, she has it right now. I actually took 2 cleaned out Pringles cans and cut them out and taped them up so I could get it back stateside, and she has it to this day with the picture. So, and it was for it says very rough English, to Mr. Sanders, strongest, thank you for your service to country and Baghdad, and it was very cool.
So was the language barrier difficult for you?
It wasn't for me. I was just speaking to my brother, who had actually served as well and went to Iraq 2 days ago, and I was discussing with him how it didn't affect me. you know, as a kid, I always wanted to go everywhere. That's a big reason why I joined the military, is to see the world. And it was amazing. It was completely alien and completely foreign. The language, it just looked like something out of a science fiction movie or something to me. I mean, but it was not hard at all. Our translator, who we hired, his name is, what was his name now? Kasai. And he reminded me of my grandfather. He was an older gentleman. And the reason why he reminded me of my grandfather is the shirts he wore. He was always very, very for sure of himself. He was a shaker and a mover, you know, and he wanted to help the Americans very much. And it was really cool to have him there. He would tell us stories about before Saddam came into power, about driving a 71 Nova on marble streets. And just, it was amazing. And it was really cool. They referred to Baghdad as the jewel of the desert before Saddam came into power. And we'd seen pictures of it, and we just couldn't believe it was the same place. Couldn't believe it.
What was different about it?
Mostly dilapidation of buildings, trash. Trash was a big, big issue. Things like public works and stuff of that nature is just non-existent when we first come in. I don't know how it is now. It's been quite a while since I've been over there. I always told my wife, I said, because I had the luxury of pulling guard duty at the Palestine Hotel, which is across from the Sheraton and overlooks the Tigris, even though there's like TOW missile building. Now, mind you, there's very much war going on. Shots being fired, mortars, all this. I was always able to peel away from it for a second and really just like, I'm in Baghdad, Iraq, you know, and that's the Tigris River. I mean, that's, if you have any church background, I mean, those are the Tigris and the Euphrates. They're in the Bible all throughout, and it's just like I'm standing right there, and it was really, and it was gorgeous. I always told my wife that if it ever had, like, all the problems cease, and I would take her there. I mean, I don't know who wouldn't. You could see that it was really, really a spectacle before Saddam came into power. You could really see it. It was present in the structures, just the palms, and it's a little warm, but you know, it didn't affect me. I like the heat.
Could you still see the marble roads?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
I was awarded the Combat Infantry Badge, which is, or a CIB, and that is for services rendered while in combat, being engaged in combat with the enemy. I have other ones too, but that's the big shiny one.
Tell us about staying in touch with your family.
That was interesting, especially in the beginning. Months would go by with nothing. Our command, in the beginning, you move that size of troops, supplies, it's a logistical nightmare. In the beginning, it's just working out the bugs. You know, you're trying to set up an infrastructure in chaos. So I understood it. I didn't like it, but I understood why it took so much to get what soldiers needed. Something as simple as talking to the family. Around the end, they got really, really good about it, and actually had web teleconferences around the end before I had left country, and before that, in the very beginning, it was hard getting everything established. Letters would come in, wouldn't come in. We'd get letters from the beginning, and we'd already got letters that were passed, and it was complicated. I'd be like, why are you writing me this now? And they're like, oh no, you got to look at the dates. So it got put out through our CO and for the rest of the company that start paying attention to the dates that are postmarked from the APO, because you'll get letters that were like 3 months ago or a month ago, and then it was working out all the bugs. Telephone calls were non-existent the first 2.5, 3 months, and we would pay local nationals that had satellite phones to try and call back home, and that got the kibosh real quick, because these wives would be calling back in, and not mine, she was worried sick, but other wives would call back in and complain that they're trying to talk to their husband and bombs are going off. And we actually, our conversation I had with my wife at the Ministry of Finance was interrupted because people were coming over the fence and shots were being fired. And I go, I gotta go. And she goes, is that? I go, nope, bye. And there were shots being fired and everything. And I couldn't imagine what it had been like for her to be on the other end of that with our son, who was 2 at the time. And she was just waiting for phone calls. And I mean, it wasn't that I was having fun. I hated to be separated from my family, but I was doing exactly what I wanted to do the whole time. And it doesn't matter how much you tell someone, this is my job. I have to, it's not like any other job. When they say I gotta go, I have to leave. There's no questions about it. As much as they would say they understood or understand, it's still one of those undertowed things that doesn't quite get talked about or addressed enough, because it's hard to accept a job or a lifestyle over your family, because when it comes down to it, you gotta go. And I didn't have a problem with it, but I don't think I could do it now with 2 kids. I didn't want to do it with the first, but I don't think I knew exactly what I was getting into, but I wouldn't change anything.
So what years were you over there?
I was there in 2004.
2004. Mm-hmm. And how long was your tour?
9 months long, before I had been medically evacuated from Medical City. It was a National Guard unit out of Oregon, I do believe, that did my initial intake and got me out on the tarmac and to Landstuhl, Germany, where I met up with my wife and son, and they were branded as my medical liaison and flew over on a C-131, I think it was, to Walter Reed in DC, and that was it.
So, Josh, were you hurt in combat?
Yeah.
And that is why you got the big gold medal?
No. I had been hurt many times before, and it was kind of a running joke. I've actually been woke up by a grenade going off, being lobbed over and blown out of my cot, and grabbing my K-pot and holstering weapon and running with the guys to go find out what was going on, and things like that. Everybody got hurt or cut or things like that, and it was kind of a running joke because they gave this guy in our platoon a Purple Heart, and it was just like for like a piece of, and it was shrapnel, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to take it away from him. The guy got wounded, and that's why you get the Purple Heart. You're wounded in battle. We all kind of, infantry's different. Bunch of grunts, find humor, and weird stuff like that. So.
What was the food like?
Ew. We lived out of a brown bag MREs for quite a while. We couldn't get log pack to come out, which was one of the, you have your S shops, and that's food, water, they take care of that stuff, mail. Log pack's like a food. They bring out like hot rations to you. And those weren't the best, but it wasn't until Kasai came along that he'd go off into this little room and he would have his dinner, and his wife would make him this chicken, and he'd have this bottle of wine, and he'd be sitting there drinking his wine, eating this chicken, and we could smell it. And he sees us all on the other side of these sandbags in this firehouse, where we got our weight bench and everything. So that was like a common area with the camo nets and everything. And he looks over and he sees like 13 Joes just staring at him, just going, because we can smell the food. And he lifts up the chicken like this, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah." Everybody jumps up. So he calls his wife up and has his wife make all this food for us, and he brings it in. He was a very, very, very cool man.
And he was your translator?
Yep.
Kasai.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have plenty of supplies and food?
Yeah, in the beginning we couldn't get people to roll out with water. Before Kasai and all that came along, we would be living off MREs, and you can space out one MRE meal for 3 meals out of the day. Because they're designed that way to have enough calories to provide you for a whole day as opposed to just one meal. And we were doing that quite a bit. Like I said, getting everything going and rolling in the very beginning is, but we were trained for that. It's to expect some stuff not be there. It wasn't bad. Showers were a godsend. I remember stains all the way from your knees just from sweat, and it'd turn our DCUs, which were tan, khaki colored, just black, and our tops would be black and soaked in salt. We actually have a picture of a soldier who was laying on his cot, and he got up, and it looked like somebody had done a chalk outline of him because he was sweating in his sleep, and the salt was the outline of his body. It was very hot.
Did you do or have something special for good luck?
Yeah, it was my wedding ring. I had to wear it on my dog tags. So I made and I was afraid that, because out in the field when I was in Germany for field exercises, the chain had snapped, and I felt it drop into my shirt. So I made this 550 cord, which is like a paracord necklace, and tied it off there. Did a cat's paw on the ring and always wore it. Would always make sure it was there, and just look at it, and yeah.
How did you entertain yourself?
Just shoot the breeze with the guys.
Did you play cards or?
Cards, worked out. I mean, there was plenty going on. That our platoon sergeant First Class Harris, made sure that idle hands were not. In the very beginning, when we got to the firehouse, we had no time for anything, but we were tasked out. We had squads go back and forth from the Ministry of Finance, which had this garden style area out in front of the building, and there were these, it was all sand. Well, we had to fortify the Ministry of Finance and fortify the firehouse. So we actually built 2 sandbag bunkers, and this is all manual labor. There were no Heskel baskets in the beginning. Heskel basket is this braided steel 5 walls of braided steel and a burlap sack in the inside, and then it's filled with earth and then placed by engineers. We did not have that in the beginning. We were just 2nd platoon, Sergeant First Class Harris. He was a blood and guts type of guy, and very thankful to have him. If I could have had a dad over there, it would have been him. But it was manual labor when we weren't doing patrols. And TCPs or company missions or battalion missions, the big missions, and sandbags and sandbags and sandbags. It was a lot of work. Had to build speed bumps, set up concertina wire, make sure the generator was working properly. Had to do lavatories, make lavatories, take care of that, set up, make sure everything was set up with our clothes to be washed at least once every 2 weeks, and sometimes it didn't happen then, but had to know when it was coming in and when it was going out, making sure all your guys in like my squad were taken care of, and make sure all weapons were PCI'd, cleaned, ready to go, things like that. Making sure your area operation was clean. Anybody sick, had to always watch that. Heat casualties. Some people really do not fare well in the heat, and even though they're living in it, their body becomes deathly ill. Could be, we thought at first it was viruses or something that was maybe something in the air, or we couldn't tell, but we had to send someone. I actually pushed paperwork to send Specialist McGill back stateside because he was deathly ill. He lost 32 pounds. He looked like bones, skin draped on bones. He wasn't worth anything to anybody. I mean, couldn't patrol, couldn't do anything, just very sick, very weak all the time. We thought at first, everybody experienced the fatigue of staying up really, really late, paranoia, I mean, these are all things you combat on a personal level. You're not getting the sleep you want to get, and when you're getting it, it's not the quality sleep that you want to get. So, I mean, it's just a bunch of stuff people deal with on a personal level, but heat was an issue for quite a few people. We had trained up in Kuwait. Sergeant First Class Harris would make us don all of our battle rattle, and we would be walking around out in the desert, and everybody's just, I probably lost 15 pounds in Kuwait alone. Everything changed because of where we were going and what we were doing inside Baghdad. When we got to Kuwait, we had learned that all the mount tactics, which are urban warfare tactics, that we had learned in basic training and reestablished in Germany, were all null and void. So we got retrained by special forces, and I'm glad they did it, because it would have been bad. It was one of those things where you're very thankful that your command sees that there's, or knows of something being wrong, and steps up to the plate and says, we need to do it this way. So we received train up from XSF, who were civilian contract at the time, sharper ways to conduct yourself in hostile environments like that. And I believe it's the reason why our personal platoon suffered no casualties.
So you really didn't have a lot of idle time on your hands.
No, ma'am.
Did you have any leave time over there? And if so, where did you go?
I had leave, I believe it was the seventh month, and it was back to Germany to be with my wife and son.
So they were able to come and meet you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where I was stationed. So they had housing there in Bootsbach. Friedberg Ray Barracks was the base. It was the second home of Elvis Presley, and he lived in Bad Nauheim, which was the other Army housing off post. The other one was Bootsbach, and that's where we had stationed. That's where my family resided for the time that I was in Iraq.
Do you recall any particular humorous or unusual event? Did you guys play jokes on each other?
Just stupid infantry stuff. Just, you know, these little airsoft guns or whatever. You know, we'd the guys would run around and, you know, shoot each other like they were cap guns or whatever, and, you know, somebody would get angry and then they'd start mouthing. We'd wrestle quite a bit. We wrestled quite a bit. Sergeant Major Tilley came by, and he was on his way out. This was his last brouhaha, and he was retiring, and he was a very cool guy. And I remember us being all there in our common area that we had staged, and he was like, "So who wants a picture?" You know, and everybody's like, "Oh, all right, yeah, let's go get pictures." And you know, get one of the guys puts Sergeant Major of the Army in a headlock, you know, and he's got a picture of it. You know, they're just goofing off, stuff like that.
So what did you think of your officers?
They did excellent. Lieutenant Dykema, he did a really good job. He replaced, or not replaced, but stepped in for Lieutenant Gorzinski. We all called him Lieutenant G because it's a lot easier. We loved Lieutenant G. He was a really good guy. It's because he listened to the NCOs, and an officer that listens to the NCOs is going to have his platoon's best interests in view. Lieutenant Dykema did a really good job, though. Really good job. He stepped up to the plate, and I thought they did a wonderful job. It was higher up that was always like, oh, like, why are we going here? Why are we guarding trash piles? You know, it's just like, whatever. I mean, it's common banter. You're going to have that.
Did you keep a personal diary while you were over there, or a journal? Or?
No, I wrote, I would write some things down. I'd scribble some things. But it was mainly just writing to Mindy. That was about it.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
Yes, ma'am. It was the day my daughter was born.
Wow.
September 24th was the day I was retired out of the military. Yeah.
Pretty special day.
Yeah.
Where were you?
I was with my daughter. I was actually with my daughter. They had cut me papers to leave Walter Reed that weekend. There was no sense in me to be there any longer, and I was at home for that. So I got to be at home, and it was amazing. I was really worried that I would not get to be there for that, and fates had it be that saw me home.
After you retired from the Army, your service date was over, did you go back to work? Did you go to school? What have you done?
I kind of did a little bit of everything. I went back to school. I grabbed associates in criminal law and justice. Carried a 3.84 all 2 years. Decided that I wanted to do. I had gained some weight because when you don't have somebody telling you, what to eat and it's time for PT, you kind of put on some pounds, and so I wanted to retool that part of my life. Became a runner and then an endurance athlete, ran some triathlons, trained for a half marathon with my wife. During that time I had quit smoking, helped put my youngest brother through high school, made sure he finished up high school. He went on to join the military as well. He's an MP with the National Guard currently here in Springfield. Let's see here, became a lifeguard. I've worked as a supervisor for the past 4 years, or coming up on 5 now, with the Sullivan Civic Center. Do a little construction here and there for side money. Nothing big though. It's usually just friends and family and things like that. Just a little bit of everything.
Were you able to take advantage of some of the military benefits, GI Bill?
GI Bill, definitely. And I'm actually getting ready to go back to school again. So.
Did you make any close friendships while you were in service?
Yeah, definitely. Curtis Cochran. He was in basic training with me. Fort Benning, my second home. I say that because it's where I believe I learned how to be a man. Infantry basic training, it's not called basic training, it's called OSSET, which is your basic and your AIT all in one. There's no break in between it. And that was a big step for me. It was something I always wanted to do, and when I accomplished it, it was a big part of my life. He was with me all through that, and we got stationed. We were like on this buddy system. Our first night in Germany was interesting. It was a flip of a coin where we were going to be stationed. My younger brother, he was actually going into AIT, the portion of his AIT, he was infantry as well, and coming over to Germany, was slotted to be stationed with the Big Red 1 down in Vilsec. Well, it was a flip of a coin. Cochran goes, okay, heads, he picks heads, and the coin head landed on Old Ironsides, which was first AD, so that's where we went. And my brother was stationed in Vilsec, so we kind of went back and forth and saw each other that way. But yeah, we got stationed by a flip of a coin at the reception's desk there. It was like a placement, hub in Ronmine, the Ronmine Air Base there in Germany. Yep.
Are you still in contact with Curtis?
Nope, I haven't heard from him. That's the lay of the land. It's the weirdest thing in the world. You'll never forget those people, and I don't know how to get a hold of them. So I would if I could, but yeah, definite brothers through the whole ordeal.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or military in general?
Yeah, I mean, when you're exposed to things like that, it makes you think differently. It makes you think about a lot of stuff. Opens your eyes a lot, you know, to, I mean, some people. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I don't know what other people felt or thought, but I know what it did for me, and it opened up a lot of stuff that I just, you know, I never really thought about before, and how lucky and fortunate we are to have everything we have here in this country, because it's awesome in its power. I mean, just to see buildings just like this and be completely devastated, you know, or the wrong person comes into power and your structure, the infrastructure of the whole country falls apart. It's very, very awesome that we have this. Very thankful for it.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'd do it all over again if I could. I absolutely love being a soldier.
So show us the picture that it...
All right. There's the picture that I carried with me in Iraq.
Okay.
And that's of my son, Dylan. The same picture that I gave the art student over there at the University of Baghdad. And this is the picture that he drew for me.
And Josh, can you read what it says?
It says, my best wishes, Mr. Sanders. I hope you could be like to serve freedom everywhere. Thank you. Ajib, Iraq, 2/7/2003. And he did that with a number 2 pencil.
Okay. And how did you get that picture back, Josh?
This, I didn't have an art tube or anything to send it back, and I didn't want to fold it, so I took a couple of the guys' Pringles cans. And fashioned an art tube out of it. Took about 2.5 to make, and that's how I got it back to my wife, Mindy, in Germany at the time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Josh, when did you, can you recall the day your service ended?
Yes, I left the Army the 22nd of September in 2004. My daughter was born the very next day on the 23rd. And then my mother's birthday is the 24th.
So that was a very important week for you.
Yes, ma'am. It was awesome. It was like ending one part of my life and going into the next. And Mary Ellen came the day before, or the day after, and it was great. It was a new addition to the family, and how I was like leaving the military and starting my civilian life.
A great ending to a new
Definitely.
beginning.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh, for your time.
Thank you.